We all know how to set up a quick water simulation in Blender. You pull up the search menu with F3 and type quick liquid, and voila! You have a fluid domain added, a cube for the fluid flow object, and if you play it back, you even get near real-time fluid effects. So, what's the point of this video? We're done. That's it. Goodbye, ski! Or do you maybe want to learn all the secrets and tips and tricks on how to get great looking water effects in Blender? We're talking like splash particles, collision objects, fast motion, and great looking renders? Well, then you might want to stick around because things are about to get wet. Speaking about water, this video is inspired by Mr. Beast because for a third time, all of us creators are teaming up again to do something awesome. First, we planted 20 million trees. Then we cleared over 30 million pounds of trash out of the oceans. And now we need every single one of you to achieve our latest goal to raise $40 million to bring clean water to people all around the world. And we have a promise. $1 donated equals 1 year of clean water supplied to someone. It's really that simple and that easy. So $20 would be 20 years of water. Most of us probably take for granted clean water without ever realizing that every 1 out of 10 people don't have that luxury and are often getting sick from dirty, unclean water. How often do you spend a few bucks on a bottled water? Well, just contributing that would give years of clean water to someone in need. So guys, let's come together one more time and make this goal happen. And in return, I'm going to show you how to create great looking water splashes and effects right now for free in Blender. It just so happens that Blender 4.5 was recently released and saw a big 2x boost in performance for liquid simulations. So be sure to have the latest version of Blender installed from blender.org. So, we'll start by creating a new scene in Blender, and sparing our default cube this time, we'll use it as our fluid domain and hit S and 3 to scale it up 3 times. Then I'll shift click to move my cursor outside the cube and go shift A and add in an icosphere. Scale this down smaller by hitting S and then 0.25. This will be our fluid flow object. So then hitting number pad 3 to jump to side view, I'll hit G to grab that flow object and move it inside of our fluid domain. Because any object interacting or causing fluid needs to be inside of this cube now. Then I'll select the cube and pull up our physics tab here, adding in the fluid physics on the cube and changing the type to domain. Next, grab the icosphere, add fluid to it as well, but change this type to be the flow. Right now the flow type is set to smoke, change that to liquid. Now you want to make sure your cube is also set to a domain type of liquid, and if you jump to frame 1 and press play, you'll see we have fluid animation. This is just a single drop of fluid though, because our flow type on our icosphere is set to the behavior of geometry. We want to change this to inflow, so it's basically a faucet adding fluid to the simulation. Now when you jump to frame 1 and play, you can see it's exactly that. We just continuously add fluid into this box. It's pretty cool. And we can give this fluid some force, like it's coming out of a sprayer head, by using initial velocity. So for example, I want the fluid to move along the negative y-axis here, so I can choose initial velocity. Under the y value, I will give this a negative value of 10, and now you can see that the fluid is moving with some force along the y-axis. I also want it to be kind of shot upwards a little bit, so I'll give it a positive value of 3 along the z-axis. And with fast motion, it's always a good idea to give it a few more sub-sampling steps, so I'll increase this to 2. Then keyframing, the use flow option, we can turn on and off our water. So on frame 1 in the timeline, I'll just hover over use flow and hit I to add a keyframe. Then jump to frame 8, uncheck use flow and hit I again. Now when you play it back, the fluid will only flow between frames 1 and 8 and then stop. Kinda cool for like a burst of water. So now we want something for this water to interact with. I'll jump to front view with number pad 1 and go shift A and add in a new object, Suzanne head. Hitting Z and switching to wireframe makes it so you can see what's going on inside that fluid domain. I'm just gonna rotate this monkey a little bit by double tapping R and then move it with G, positioning it right in front of our water source. Now under our physics tab, you want to give it fluid as well and choose the type to be an effector. Make sure the effector type is set to collision and give this a few subsampling steps as well because we're dealing with some fast motion. Now if you jump to frame 1, you'll see the Suzanne monkey head interacting nicely with that water simulation. And these water effects are looking so much more dynamic now. Pretty cool looking, and we can use practically any object to interact with this water now. So I jumped over to Polyhaven and found one of their cool free assets that you can download. I'll link them in the description, and then just went File, Append, Found that object that I downloaded. This is a camera. Just went to object and appended the camera. Scaled it up and rotated it with R to position it right around where the monkey head was. And you can give this object the same fluid effector collision settings again. Except with this one, you can see the collision isn't working quite as good. A lot of the water is intersecting. So we're going to choose is planar. And that allows the object to work better with the collisions because this camera mesh isn't completely sealed in this case. The other option I'm going to choose is under our domain cube. For the resolution of the domain, I went with 92. And I didn't actually find that increasing it made the simulation look much better. We want to choose delete in obstacle. This will prevent some of the water from just sitting there inside your obstacle and not running off. You can see after we check that and play our simulation back, it's looking a lot better. Now, while we're in the domain settings, it's time to take it to the next level with some splash particles. So scroll down to particles and enable spray. Depending on your fluid simulation, you might also want foam and bubbles, but because we're just doing sort of a water spray in this effect, just using spray is all we really need. The only setting I'm going to choose is I'm going to actually reduce some of the particles because you get a lot with these simulations. So under the wave crest, I'm going to change it from 200 down to 50, and then the trapped air particles, I'll go down to 10. You can also change your cache end to just be 50 because we don't need to be simulating 250 frames. Then when you play back your simulation, you can see we have those particles also interacting with the water as a spray effect. Now that our simulation is honestly looking pretty cool, we can start making things look nice and polished. You can start by right-clicking on the domain and choosing Shade Smooth for the fluid. Then what you'll do is you can see there's a gap between the fluid and our camera object here. To fix this, just grab the camera, hit Shift D to duplicate it. On the second one now, you'll want to delete the fluid effects under your physics tab, and then make the first one not render by unchecking the camera button here up in the inspector. Then scale up your second camera a little bit so it's closer to the fluid, and this will be the one that's rendered. And that looks quite a bit better in our simulation. Time to start rendering these effects. Under the render settings, we're going to be using the Cycles render engine. Then jumping to your world settings, you can open up an HDR environment texture. This is one from HDR Haven, and I went with one that was just pure sky, so we didn't need any ground for this studio-like render. I'll put a link to it in the description as well. So open that up, switch to rendered view, and you can see that water is kind of looking like milk right now. Under your render settings, we can go to film and choose transparent so we don't see the HDR in the background. Then we'll split the window, and in this new window, bring up the shader editor. For the fluid domain material here, we're going to go ahead and take the roughness down to 0 or very close to 0, like a 0.001. Then under transmission, give it a weight of 1. Just doing that makes it look so much more like water. You might recognize a few of these settings from the water material video that I did a little while back. Like this next step of going Shift A, adding in a light path node and connecting the is camera array to the alpha. This just kind of takes out these shadows inside the water and makes it look more realistic. So let's work on that render some more by finding a view that looks kind of cool in our 3D viewport, then grabbing our camera here and going Control Alt number pad 0 to snap the camera to that view. Under your camera settings, I found a focal length of about 80mm to look cool. Then with the camera selected, you can double tap R to kind of adjust the rotation. Under your render settings, you can make it a 1080 by 1080 render, so we have a square aspect ratio. And then just play around with the positioning of your flow object to get that water splash looking oh so perfect. Just moving that flow object and resimulating it can give you very different results, so go ahead and have fun with this and play around with it. Once you have something you're happy with, I'm going to hit Shift A, add in a plane, scale it up real large underneath our water simulation, and give it a new material that's very dark, close to black even. Then tabbing into edit mode, selecting edge select mode as you can see here, and grabbing the two furthest corners of those planes, and hitting E to extrude them up for our backdrop. Now you can see the fluid is looking much darker, so we're going to add some studio lighting to this in a second. First off though, there's one more trick once you're happy with the fluid simulation to get even more detailed looking fluid, and that's by selecting your fluid object, going down to your mesh settings, and changing the up res factor from 2 all the way to 4 is what I found to look good. You can see you get so much more detail in that mesh without even increasing the overall resolution of the domain. Now that we have a nice high resolution looking simulation, let's light this puppy up. So jumping to top view with number pad 7, I'll go Shift A and add in a light, area light. Jumping to your light settings here in the side tab, we'll take the power all the way up to 450 and then change the beam shape to something much smaller, like 9 degrees in this case. This gives us a very focused light beam that we can shine just at that splash. So just double tapping R and placing it behind our camera and splash and pulling it up so it's right behind the camera. Then I'm going to duplicate this for a second area lamp, rotate it about 90 degrees and position it to the side of the camera as well. You can see by just playing around with these lights a little bit, it really adds a lot of detail by adding those small highlights to your fluid mesh and making it look oh so crispy. Once you're pretty happy with the way this water's looking, let's add those particles to the render now as well. So for this, go Shift A and add in an icosphere, and make sure the icosphere is set to just one subdivision. We can drop the menu down here and check 1. Then give it the same material as the water splash that we created by selecting it here in the material menu. Then just click 2 to make it its own material. We'll name this water splish. Under our particles, you can see where we have the spray particles, and you can turn the view of these on and off if you want, like I did here. But since we're rendering them, we want them on now. We're just going to change it from render as halo to render as object. For that instance object, we're going to open up this second icosphere that we've added into our scene now, icosphere 1. And you can see that looks kind of insane, but we're just going to take the object scale of this all the way down to a 0.001 and the scale randomness all the way up to a 0.9. You can see this adds some real small particles to the edges of our splash here. And then in the material settings, I found it look good to take the roughness value up a little bit higher on the splash particles and take the weight on the transmission value down a bit. This just kind of tone down those specular highlights on these splash particles. A few final touches to our fluid domain object here was adding a little bit of volume to it as well. You can go Shift A and add in a principled volume shader, connect it to the volume input on your material output. You can see that makes it look like a really hazy water right off the bat, but we'll take the density down to just a 0.02 and give it a bit of anisotropy as well. Then we'll go Shift A and add in a mix shader, drop it right in there, and add in a second shader, volume absorption. Connect it to the bottom socket of your mix, and then take the density down to about a 0.6. Now just adjusting the color here will kind of adjust the overall hue of your water realistically. So I'm going to give it a nice blue, tiny bit of greenish color here, and take the mix factor down to about a 0.35. If you want to get like a dyed water effect, you could turn the density up and the mix as well. Probably want to turn the specularity off on your background object by going to your specular settings here and taking the IOR level down to 0. You can also play around with the rotation of your world HDR in the world shader settings here to adjust the way the reflections are looking in the camera and water. But there we go, we've made it to the end, and that's how you get some pretty cool looking water effects. Of course, you could render this out as an animation now as well if you didn't want just a still render. But here we went from your basic quick liquid to an advanced epic looking water splash. I love working with simulations in Blender. They're super cool, so I'll never stop. If you made something cool, post it up on Instagram or Facebook or wherever and tag CG Geek, because I love to see what you guys create. That'll do it for me, guys. I'll see you in the next video soon. Peace!